course, there really wasn't any company then. It was just me and a handful of construction workers. From the time I was a kid, I mean 4, 5, 6 years old, I built things out of wood. I have vivid recollections of Christmas morning when my parents would say, okay, it's for me and my sister to come in and look at the Christmas tree. And there were just the two of us. And on her side, all the things that a girl gets, clothes and dolls, etc. On my side, lumber and tools. That's what I liked, that's what I wanted, and I was always building things, and so building was just natural for me. I loved the building process. I liked to see it. I liked all of it. I liked to see the ground scratched, and I liked to see the concrete being poured. I took one of my friends out there and do a job once, and I said, smell that farm oil, smell that concrete, doesn't it smell great? My first job was not much, a porch enclosure for $2,600. I worked for several months hard on it, doing a lot of the work myself, and managed to make $200. At the end of the first year, revenue was $27,000, and I had made $1,800. Which was pretty miserable looking back on it, but I thought I was doing okay. The next year I really kicked it in and I made $2,100. The first 4 years I did all of the office work myself. I had no secretary, no help. I had a little portable building which I bought for $508. It's a very vivid memory. And I officed in there. I did all the estimating. I typed my contracts, I made the payroll, which I hated to do. I did the books, I delivered materials to the job in the pickup truck. I cleaned up the job at the end of the day. But 7 years later, in 1966, when I was wondering if I would survive at all, because actually the first 7 years were just a contest in survival, I picked up 2 small remodeling jobs and made $12,000 and didn't think that anybody in the world had that much money. The following year, in 1967, along came Hemisphere, and we picked up work at the end of 1967 and then on into 1968. I had all sorts of interesting projects. My volume or revenue went from about $100,000 a year to over $1 million in 1 year. So it was a big step up. Toward the end of the 1960s, following the Hemisphere work, we moved into more commercial construction work, which was always my objective. The only reason I really did the residential remodeling was that was all there was available. And we were moving into more commercial work. One Riverwalk Place, which is an 18-story building, which to date is the tallest building that we had built. The Toyota plant is a definite milestone for the company. That's quite a facility there. To look at 2 million square feet is really something. And then a big event occurred in 1972 when we were awarded major additions and complete remodeling of the San Antonio Country Club. The reason that was significant is that during that 18-month construction period, every mover and shaker in San Antonio came there at one time or another and saw a job that was moving along, that was clean, that looked good and produced a good finished product. A former mayor said to me there one day, "Everybody here works." And I said, "Well, of course, everybody is supposed to work." He says, "That's not true on every construction job." I've learned to be dependable. I think that a lot of people are looking for dependability, and they recognize dependability and that it means something to them. I had an appointment with Ed Mock, an architect, at 3 o'clock one afternoon at his office, and I walked in, and he looked at his watch, and he says, "You're the most punctual person I know." And I said, "Well, Ed, how could you expect me to finish the job on time if I couldn't even make the meeting on time? So I tell my people that we need to pay attention to a lot of little things. Answer a phone call when you get it. Don't disregard it, don't put it off. When you get a letter that needs an answer it right away. When there's a request for change order, proposal, or whatever it may be, do it promptly. If it takes a week or two to gather all the information, let the person who's made the request know that you're working on it, either in writing or by telephone. So those are things that I think are very, very important to establish a person and a company's dependability and reputation. The kind of building that I like best is something of quality, something of significance also. We've done a good bit of university work. That's important. School, important. Healthcare, hospitals, and operating rooms, and medical facilities of that type. Anything that is of real importance. I would say the most important building we've ever built is the Children's Cancer Research Institute. The reason for that is that as a father and a grandfather, I know the importance of children and what they mean to me, and certainly any kind of an endeavor, which is the object of that building, that work, to cure cancer or find a cure to cancer is as high a calling as there can be. And I have said to many, many people that the Children's Cancer Research Institute is the most significant building we've ever built. And it's a very handsome building as well. And we moved on from there. And at about, I would say probably during the early 1980s, I think it's correct to say that we were an established company. At that point in time, I quit being an entrepreneur or an individual owner of the company. And as I like to say, I stopped being a builder of building, and I started being a builder of a company that builds buildings. And there is a difference. So we moved on through the 1980s, and then toward the end of the 80s, things got a little bit difficult in that we had savings and loan problems and the oil field problems and so forth. So we had a definite downturn and slowdown. And by 1990, when I turned 60, I was beginning to think about maybe moving on. And what prompted me to think that is that every time we had a company meeting, that is a meeting with the managers, and we were discussing what work to go after, what to pursue, what to bid, I found myself delivering a sermonette that always went something like this. Let's don't take any undue risk. Let's don't take any work too cheap. Let's be very careful what we do. Let's don't bid any jobs that don't have good, complete plans. That was my position, but that was certainly not the position of the 25 and 30-year-olds in the company who were eager and smart as can be, very industrious, and they wanted to charge ahead. That prompted me one day in early 1990, in January, to say to Dwayne, who by then was Executive Vice President, how would you like to make me a buyout offer? He said, well, that's very interesting. I knew he would latch on to that. And I remember clearly that was 10 o'clock in the morning. At 11 o'clock, he came back to me and he said, I have met with the other company officers, and we will make you a buyout offer in the next 6 months. I said, fine. When I came back from lunch that very day at 1 o'clock, there was a draft of the buyout offer on my desk. And I read it rather hurriedly and went into his office, and I said, this is a buy-down offer, not a buy-out offer. He says, it's intended to be a buy-out offer, but I like the idea of buy-down better. So what we did was we entered into an agreement that the company, during the 1990s, that is the full decade from 1990 to the year 2000, would buy back my stock so that by the year 2000 I would have no stock. So by the year 2000 I was out as a shareholder, and they're doing very well, and the company continues to operate very strongly. And as I tell people, once I got out of it, the company really took off. And it's a product, I would hope it has something to do with me. I would hope it has something to do with the foundation that I built the company on, which is to be accommodating. My slogan always has been accommodation, not confrontation. There's so many people in the construction industry, and maybe in all sorts of businesses, who'd rather argue and fuss and feud than cooperate, and in our case, build. I'd much rather build than argue. So I think that our positive attitude has played a major role in the company's success. And there's no question about it that once it got built up, and it took a number of years to do that, but once it got built up and established and recognized, there's a demand for our work. And we have really produced a lot of work in recent years, and it looks like more and more in years to come.